to be here tonight to celebrate Robin Hood and all the amazing work you do.
There are very few organizations that do as much good for so many as Robin Hood.
This is an amazing night for so many reasons. You are Robin Hood.
New York has helped each and every one of us.
Sitting round, crying over a broken heart. This gun's for hire. Even if we're just dancing in the dark. Robin Hood's been creating impactful solutions here in New York City.
I'd like to present our Silver Archer Award. That's an award that recognizes an individual whose generosity and efforts have changed the landscape of fighting poverty forever. And tonight, we give one to Sir Paul McCartney.
Let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Big, big love.
It is such a great foundation. You all know it is. All the money goes to the people.
This is a chance to reshape us.
We've raised $77,500,000.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. All right. Good to see you all. My name is Rich Bury, and I am honored to welcome you to my first Heroes Breakfast as CEO of Robin Hood. Whether you joined us a month ago at the benefit or whether it's your first time with us in a while, it is so good to be together again. Each year, Robin Hood invests in more than 300 community partners who are leading the way in the fight against poverty every single day. And this morning, we're going to honor 3 remarkable New Yorkers and the incredible nonprofit organization that are part of their stories and a part of Robin Hood's story. I have no doubt that the stories you hear today are going to inspire you, but I hope they will also challenge you. So today, I'm asking you to listen and to learn, because we do our best when we stop to really hear stories like these. As some of you know, I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, one of New York City's highest poverty neighborhoods, and I've spent my career supporting communities like it around the city. And the primary lesson that I have learned in my life and career is that there is no single or simple answer to the challenge of poverty. It is not only the lack of quality jobs or affordable housing. It is not only food insecurity or failing schools or crime or poor health care. It is not only struggling to find the money to deal with an emergency or not having the capital to start a small business. It is all of these things and a million other obstacles that conspire to deny some communities the access to opportunities that so many of us take for granted. In today's stories, you're going to hear about some of those challenges. But you will also hear that those challenges do not have to define the destinies of our fellow New Yorkers. Because that's what it means to be Robin Hood, to believe something better is possible, and more than that, to be willing to do something about it. As our city and our state welcome new leadership, Robin Hood is poised to lead the way for New York's next great comeback. We know what it takes to build partnerships across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to fight poverty in our city. We've done it with charter schools. We did it by helping to increase college completion rates at CUNY. And we're doing it now by helping to expand the city's emergency food system. And we're going to keep doing it by doubling down on what works while continuing to invest in new ideas and new leaders. But as our city continues to wrestle with the global pandemic and the impact it's having, especially on our most vulnerable neighbors. It's going to take all of us. Everyone in this room has benefited from the opportunity that only this country, and indeed only this city, provides. We have an opportunity in this moment to pay it forward, to make the American dream real for everyone. We must seize this moment to build a new New York, one with opportunity for all. Today we're going to hear three powerful examples of what happens when New Yorkers come together. And we're going to start with what's most important and certainly closest to my heart, with our children. The reality is that while our kids are finally back in the classroom, they are a long way from being on track. Nearly half are performing below grade level even before the pandemic. And for Black and Latino children, that number was higher, 65%. And today, nearly 70% of the 1.1 million children in our school system are living in poverty. But hope lies in the work of incredible organizations like Partnership with Children. Today, Partnership with Children provides mental health services and enrichment programs to over 30,000 students and their families at 32 schools in all 5 boroughs of New York City. Robin Hood has been a proud supporter of Partnership with Children for nearly 2 decades. So without further ado, I am honored to introduce my dear friend and partner in this work, Margaret Crotty, the Executive Director of Partnership with Children.
Well, Rich, I'm so happy that you're here at Robin Hood. When you went to city government, we really felt like one of our own was going to be deputy mayor. And we have that same feeling now that you're here at Robin Hood. It's really such a treat to be with you here today. So good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Crotty. I'm the Executive Director of Partnership with Children. And as Rich said, Robin Hood's been funding Partnership with Children for nearly 20 years. We were in that first wave of mental health grants that Robin Hood provided after September 11th. And Robin Hood's been showing up for us ever since. They've helped us triple in size in 10 years, allowing us to serve exponentially more children who otherwise would never have been reached. So to many, Robin Hood is, on the surface, all about the numbers. But the truth is, they know that our work depends on trusted relationships. There's a little story, an allegory that I wanted to tell, about a customs official at an imaginary international border. And every day this guard sees a man push his bicycle across the border with a big box tied to the handlebars. Every day the guard would ask, "What's in the box?" And the man would say, "Sand, sir." The guard would look through, and sure enough, it was full of sand, so he'd shrug, and every day he'd wave him across the border. And this happened day after day, week after week, month after month. The man would show up every morning with the bike, big box tied to the handlebars. So many years later, these two men meet again. The customs official, long since retired, finally says, "I've been dying to ask, why did you bring so much sand across the border all those years?" "Sand?" the guy said. "I was smuggling bicycles." And so it is with Robin Hood. Yes, Robin Hood is all about the funding and the metrics, and our numbers are strong. But really, Robin Hood has been building a relationship with us, day after day, month after month, year after year. It's always been about the bicycles. The metrics don't replace Robin Hood's humanity, they complement it. You see, Robin Hood understands that people are not variable costs. We can't just cut a position or leave a school and expect the same results when we show back up. And that's critical because we could never effectively serve those 30,000 children and their families without trusted relationships. In the summer of 2020, when most programs shut down, Robin Hood funded us to continue to provide the mental health services that our city's young people so desperately have needed. They made it possible for us not to lay off any staff or leave any school communities. So thank you. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for helping us not only to build such a strong team, but also to maintain it and to invest it no matter what comes our way. That, Robin Hood, is how you get the bicycles across. So today, it is my incredible honor to introduce my colleague, Marcus Pass, who's been a hero long before this morning. Marcus is our community school director at PS 165 in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Our principal is here. when we hired Marcus, he had already spent nearly 15 years, almost half his life, the majority of his life, I think, dedicated to youth development, building and cultivating relationships in his local communities of Bed-Stuy and Brownsville. Marcus once said that, yes, Partnership with Children is concerned about the details, the staff, the metrics, but the most important thing, he said, is that Partnership with Children feels like a family. He said, when you feel loved, it's easier to give love. And that's what Marcus does for the children at 165 every day. I am so grateful and so proud to work alongside Marcus. He is a hero and he is loved. So please welcome our community school director at PS 165 Ida Posner School, Marcus Pass.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's an honor to stand up here on behalf of Partnership with Children. I'm Marcus Pass from Brooklyn, New York. Where else? I was born and raised in Bed-Stuy before gentrification, and back then it was a tough neighborhood. Just like almost every Brooklyn boy, I wanted to go to the NBA or be a rapper. And that's probably because basketball players and musicians were the only people we saw in positions of power that actually looked like us. So those were our only role models. My two brothers and I grew up without a father, raised by a single mother. Hi, Mom. I love you. That's not a part of the speech. My mother worked as a school safety agent at PS 40 in Brooklyn. She struggled like most single mothers, and we moved around a lot. When I turned 13, my mother was like, boy, you gotta help out around this house, and brought me to volunteer at her job. She said, if you make yourself useful, when they're ready to hire someone, they'll hire you. And they did. My first paying job was helping kids with homework at the after-school program. What started out as a way to help my mom became a way of life. I worked as a tutor, a sports coach, a music instructor, and eventually I worked my way all the way up to the assistant director. That's when the director position became available at PS 165. What's up, Mr. Rivers? Let's get it. In Brownsville. In Brownsville. Never ran, never will. For those of you who don't know, Brownsville is still Brownsville. It's like a time capsule of old school Brooklyn. There are certain streets you still don't walk down unless you're from there. That's the environment these kids are growing up in every single day. I loved working with youth, but working in after-school programs meant that I only had a brief glance into my students' lives. And I couldn't make the lasting impact that so many of the kids really needed. 3 hours of interaction a day just wasn't enough. I know it seems crazy, but it's true. In 2018, the principal told me that a position as the community school director was available in his building, and he thought I would be a great candidate. I went for it, and I got it. Hey, Meredith. And here I am working for Partnership with Children. We serve around 225 kids ranging from 3K to 5th grade. The average family in Brownsville before the pandemic made under $32,000 a year, and COVID made it worse. Some of our students are homeless and move from place to place. Many come from broken homes without enough money to go around. All the same situations and circumstances I experienced growing up. It's a perfect storm that makes it hard for kids to come to school, let alone learn. I look like these kids. I talk like them. I've lived the struggles they're facing. So when these kids and families see me, there's a connection you can't fake. That's trust, and that makes everything easier. When you're struggling, that's not an easy thing to admit, even when resources are readily available. So I learned the trick. If you're there when things are going good, you just might be the person they go to when things are going bad. You have to talk to people all the time, not just in a crisis. That's how family works. My role is to always be there to lend a helping hand. I'm asking questions like, did you get enough to eat yesterday? Does your mom need a Metro card to get to work? Are you out of laundry? Do you need a hug? I mean, a fist bump, because, we can't hug anymore, it's COVID. Our success is about relationships, plain and simple. It affects the energy in the whole building, the student attendance, performance, and family engagement. We're a school too, though, so of course we're concerned with learning. But I get to be really focused on the community to make sure, first and foremost, these kids and families have the foundation to be able to show up ready to learn. Because after we get what they need, then we can work on talking about everything else. The beauty of partnership with children is that we've got a social worker on site. Hey, Hannah's here. Hi, Hannah. We have a social worker on site, and we partner to address everything going on outside and inside. We've proven again and again that schools are some of the very best places to deliver these mental health services. Robin Hood provides the funding for us to do what is needed without all the red tape. At the height of the pandemic, the infection rate in Brownsville was more than twice the city average. So our kids were experiencing very real instability and, in many cases, heavy losses. Robin Hood made it possible to remain a safe haven for our kids, a place they could go for 8 hours a day where they wouldn't have to worry about verbal, physical abuse, or hunger. We sent out weekly surveys to families and used texts, phone calls, and home visits to understand the challenges our families were facing. We noticed that food was a huge issue, so I helped launch a food pantry out of our auditorium. And I knew that going to a pantry can be tough, right? You feel like you're being rushed in, and without much choice. You just get the bag and they're like, get out of here. I didn't like that for my people. So I decided to put a spin on it. We bought food wholesale, created a menu of options for parents to pick from, and packed custom bags that our family could pick up shame-free and actually got what they wanted and needed. Partnership with children is about making sure families feel seen and understood. They do the same thing for their staff. It's nothing fancy. They just make me feel like I'm important. They show up for me. There are a lot of things I love about PS 165 and partnership with children, but you heard Margaret. They understand that relationship is everything. That's the glue, that's the gas. Knowing they have my back has given me the opportunity to be the me I wish I had growing up, kind of like a role model. But the truth is, every single day, these families inspire me. I've got parents who can't read, working multiple jobs, and they still bring their kids to school every single day, hoping for better opportunities than they currently have. Living in Brownsville requires the strength and resilience to get up every morning and keep going, even when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes courage to hope for the kind of success you haven't seen in generations that came before you, that you haven't even experienced yourself. If you ask me what I want for these kids, I want more. I want them to get everything they need and the things that they want too. I don't want to just give them the bare necessities. I want them to thrive, to be able to do the same things that other families and other kids in other neighborhoods do. Thank you for investing in that hope and for ensuring organizations like Partnership with Children are there day in and day out to build a foundation for their success. Thank you.
Well, Marcus, thank you. Thank you for having me have to follow that up. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Justin Tuck. I absolutely hate giving speeches where I have to read. My friend Daniel Rosenzweig told me to make sure that I stick to the script, so I'm going to make sure that I do that. I come from a house of preachers and deacons in the Deep South, so normally we tend to rabble, so I'm going to just stick to it. But I found my way, into Robin Hood by a certain person we like to call Tudor. But I've stayed committed to this work. I've stayed committed to this because it's easy to see the impact of Robin Hood. Not only in New York City, but in organizations around the country and in the people and the work that support this great charity. Because when you give Robin Hood $1, That dollar goes directly to the most impactful poverty fighting programs. Not 60 cents, not 70 cents, that entire dollar goes to this work. And I, like so many of us, have tried to reincarnate that in our own philanthropy. From the inside, it's very easy to look at Robin Hood and see all the fancy events, the nice suits, the big dollar raise events. You never really get the opportunity to see the boots on the ground. But when you're in it, you get to see the impact directly. You get to see exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it and the people that are directly affected by it. That is special to me. That's why I love being a part of Robin Hood. This mission is so dear to me. It's so near and dear to my heart. It's because I grew up in a community that's not far from what we're seeing in New York City. In Kelton, Alabama, a place that I'm sure none of you know, as much as well-traveled as this room is. Kelton, Alabama is a place that's home to 217 people. I think last census, it was about 85 of them last name Tuck. My dad used to tell me if I was gonna date a girl, make sure she lived 3 counties over to make sure she wasn't kin to me. So I hope that paints a picture of where I'm from. But let's get to the brass numbers here. Kelton, Alabama is a place where nearly only about 50% of my graduating class graduated on time. The annual income in Kelton, Alabama is less than $20,000 a year. Now, Kelton is not New York City, but I think we'll all agree that even on $20,000 a year in Kelton, Alabama is hard to survive, correct? Okay. Not your typical beginning of a success story, right? But what do I have in common with so many other people who have found themselves in certain circumstances? Education, transformative mentors. Our next hero and I have that in common. Derrick and Nkosi Cain spent 18 years incarcerated after getting caught up in a life of crime, after being forced to drop out of Georgia State due to financial strains. After a couple of years of being inside, his life was forever altered by a great mentor that brought him back to his true love, education. The day that he walked out of prison, Nkosi had 5 degrees. Yes, I said 5. So for every one of us who are sitting in this room and are impressed by our Ivy League MBAs, we all got some catching up to do. But you know what, let me just back up for a minute. Around 2 decades ago, Robin Hood's chairman, John Griffin, created Blue Ridge Labs, a social impact incubator that brings together computer programmers, designers, and community members to develop new technologies around fighting poverty. In 2016, Blue Ridge Labs launched its Catalyst program to support the work and vision of remarkable leaders developing impact poverty-fighting solutions. Since then, Catalyst has played a vital role in the success of celebrating nonprofits like Good Call, Just Fix, Nestle, and Upsolve, just to name a few. And Nkosi's Touchdown NYC is yet another rising star. You can't have a conversation about getting families back together and back on their feet in New York City without talking about reentry. This crowd loves numbers. Here's a couple of numbers for you. 100,000 people are released from prison in New York City alone each year. Without intervention, 77% of those find themselves rearrested within 5 years. It is not just a cycle of recidivism, that's a hard word to say, we're trying to disrupt. But the ripple effect of every child, every partner, every parent in the lives of those who are incarcerated. Touchdown NYC connects returning citizens and mentors who know personally what it is to rebuild your lives after being incarcerated. These mentors are acting as activists throughout the difficult process of applying for work, temporary housing, and benefits. Nkosi founded Touchdown more than 20 years ago after his work in criminal justice reform, including his contribution as a founding member to the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund. It is a complete honor to celebrate and to learn from him today. Please welcome Derrick Nkosi Cain.
Good morning, folks. Listen, it's really cool to be up here. Justin, I'm honored for that introduction, but I hate to break it to you, Touchdown NYC has zero reference to football, but we'll get to that later. Folks, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, born 1967. I had a dope childhood, dope meaning good. I was the fourth of 6 children, grew up in a building where I had family on every floor, starting with my great-grandmother on the bottom. I had an affinity for learning from the start. With an academic scholarship from Boys and Girls High School and high hopes of playing professional basketball like everyone else in the hood, I went on to Georgia State University, a first in my family. But when my scholarship ended, my parents simply couldn't afford to send me back. But back in Brooklyn, things had changed. The guys I hung out with had material possessions, and in my mind, they had made it. I wanted that too. So I dove headlong into the criminal lifestyle without even considering the consequences, and that landed me in prison for the next 18 years. At Sing Sing, I pretty much focused on playing ball and smoking weed, because really, I did not want to deal with my reality. But the gentleman in the cell next to me had been watching me. His name was Cardell Blood Shared. And his mentorship would forever change the course of my life. One day he propositioned me. He said, hey man, listen, if you come with me to class tonight, I'll cook you some Jack Mac. Now, I know you beautiful folk don't know what Jack Mac is, but trust me, it's a prison delicacy. So that night I headed to the classroom. The chairs were old and wooden and kind of squeaked every time you moved. The room had a smell that reminded me of a basement or a shed. I took a seat in the back and watched as the classroom slowly began to pack with all the guys who I had considered leaders of the jail. I remember saying to myself, Cardell brought me to a gang meeting. He must be trying to recruit me. But then Cardell started teaching in a way that made me forget he was a prisoner. He challenged us to think about generative factors of crime. Were we victims, or did we engage in that behavior? He taught us accountability. He drew parallels between the civil rights movement and what was happening in prisons that day. He reminded me that I was better than that situation that I was in, that I was a son, a father, a man who just so happened to be in prison. I went back to my cell that night. I took a sheet off my bed and put it on the bars as folks do when they want a little privacy. And I cried. I was really messed up that night. Cardell's teaching made me confront myself in the reality, and it shook me to the core. So that night I decided that some changes needed to be made. Cardell passed me that bowl of Jack Mac in a book entitled From Superman to Man by J.A. Rogers. I devoured all of it, memorizing whole sections just to impress him. When he asked did I finish, I said, yep. He simply took the book, gave me another, and left. So I said, okay, I understand. That means stay ready so you don't have to get ready. When Cardell got transferred, I was heartbroken. I later learned that he died of a brain aneurysm in prison. About that same time, my mother passed too. Yeah. So that was one of the darker periods of my life. That was my place of rock bottom. It was there that I had to decide if I was going to stand up and continue my journey towards self-actualization or live in that dark place. I dug deep into Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. In Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor states that anyone who has a why to live can deal with almost any how. Anyone who has a why to live can deal with almost any how. Meanwhile, enrollment in the class Cardell taught had slipped. I knew that if somebody didn't teach that class that we would lose it. I was scared to death, but I knew I had to try it. After my first class, some of the brothers said, man, it was just like Cardell Blood Shed was here. Listen, I was so motivated by their response, I taught for the duration of my prison sentence, earning 2 degrees from Mercy College, another degree from Genesee, a master's from New York Theological Seminary, then another degree from Bard College. I became known as a mentor in every prison I went to. Academics actually became my protection. I was either creating programs or adding to existing ones in every prison I went to. In 2004, after serving 18 years, I was released, a day after my son was born. My joy, thank you. My joy quickly gave way to frustration. I had all these degrees, but could not get a job. I was broke, lonely, and aimless. I was lonely as hell. You know, I actually started craving those relationships, those social ties I had that I was in prison, because those were the things that were sustaining me. One day, my sister gave me a flyer for a company that provided employment for people who'd served time. The woman teaching this program name was Patricia. I don't know what she saw in me, but when it came time out to go get a job for the 2 weeks I was in the class, she was like, no, you're staying here. They're gonna go out there, but you staying here. And I was like, no, please. I felt like an imposter. Number one, I had never had a job in my life. And here it is, this lady telling me I'm gonna sit right here and work with her with all these beautiful people. I was like, no, I tried to sabotage it. But Patricia would have none of it. She just trusted me, believed in me, and provided a pathway to success. And for me, that was transformative. She reminded me so much of what Cardell saw in me. That was 17 years ago. I've been working diligently to reform our criminal justice system ever since. I am one of the folks from the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund, and I had the privilege of collaborating with allies here in New York and around the country for systems change. But I kept seeing gaps in the ecosystem. We were bailing people out, but then what? People had needs that exceeded bail. New York has a robust supportive service system for people exiting jails and prisons, yet so many people fail. And it's not because of lack of services, but because of lack of social ties. There is no individualized support to help people get back on their feet. About 5 months ago into the pandemic, I learned about Robin Hood's Blue Ridge Labs and Catalyst program. Initially, to be very transparent, I had an aversion to Robin Hood. I thought it was too white and too focused on technology. Basically not for me. I applied anyway and got in. And the money was good, so I said, I'll go. The next thing I knew, the Catalyst cohort members started talking about education and social justice principles. I said, hold on. Like, there was no pretense. The Blue Ridge Labs team, Ali, who's here in attendance today, always just showed up with intentionality, seriousness, and genuine passion. They just cared about the work I had to show up to. That's where Touchdown NYC was born. So here's the thing with our name. When you've been on the inside and you recognize someone on the outside, one doesn't ask, when did you get out? One asks, when did you touch down? That framing creates community with the speed of trust. When did you touch down? We understand that most reentry organizations don't have the capacity to provide individualized mentorship. I understand that. But at Touchdown NYC, that's all we do. We pair mentors who themselves has touched down with newly released people. We support them through unforeseen challenges that get in the way of individuals showing up and succeeding. We provide belonging, safety, community, so nobody feels the way I felt when I got out. Before I close, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge my co-founders who are not here today and the Blue Ridge Labs team. Without their support and their belief in what we were doing, like this just couldn't be possible. To my son Deontay, who was here with me this morning, a day old when I touched down in 2004. He's an A student graduating this year. I'm so proud of this boy. And I'll be with him when we cross our next academic milestone. To Melissa, to Desire, to Patricia, and they are the anchors who have kept me grounded. To them I say we have miles to go before we sleep. To my fellow Touchdown mentors who are in attendance, Dex and Iris, you know what it takes to rebuild a life, and I'm honored to be on this journey with you. As Coretta Scott King said, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. In closing, when I was in prison, someone asked me, Nkosi, what does hope look like? Now that I'm out of prison, hope looks like someone feeding the poor, clothing those who need clothes, sheltering the homeless. Hope to me looks a lot like Robin Hood these days. It looks like Touchdown NYC. Hope is providing the basic human needs, the basic human connections, so that everyone has the support they need to thrive. I hope to be able to share the progress that we'll be making in the upcoming years, the upcoming months. Thank you so much for allowing me the space to share. You've been a wonderful audience, and once again, it is dope being up here. Thank you.
Well, that's hard to follow. Derrick, you are incredible. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dina Powell-McCormick, and I'm very proud to serve as the Vice Chair of the Robin Hood Board. And on behalf of John Griffin, our chair, and our entire board, we really want to sincerely thank each and every one of you. We are so incredibly blessed by your support. And that support came through in a moment where the most vulnerable of our fellow citizens in New York needed it. The past few years have been so hard for so many, and we saw that in the aftermath of COVID. And our team at Robin Hood tried to respond as quickly as possible. I can't get through this piece without thanking the Robin Hood Relief Committee and Victoria. For so many days, weeks, and months, this team came together to try to do all we could. There were millions of hungry New Yorkers. Domestic violence went up by 50%. And as always is the case, those who had the least resources were the most that suffered. So we really do want to thank all of you for that. And there's a reason that this morning feels like a moment of celebration. It's Paul Tudor Jones's favorite morning of the year. We get to talk about the heroes that you are hearing about tonight. I am so proud to introduce our next hero. She is an incredible woman who had a very difficult journey. Yahaira married young and unfortunately had a very challenging marriage. Her husband left her when she was 6 weeks pregnant. Yahaira didn't have a job and became homeless. But somehow she found the inner strength to do everything that she could. She told me recently that while she was living in a shelter, she decided she would focus on making enough money to do 3 things: pay for her cell phone, pay for the Montessori school for her son, and pay for her life insurance, just in case things didn't work out. We at Robin Hood were so proud to support an organization that helped Yahaira called NPower. NPower works to provide technology and workforce training skills for women and men who don't have a job, who need to actually make much more money than they're able to, and places them in jobs. Today, 60% of all new jobs throughout the United States require technology and digital experience. And NPower not only helped Yahaira with this, but they also placed her in a high-paying job where she has been for 8 years. One of my favorite quotes represents Yahaira. A strong woman knows she has strength enough for the journey, but a woman of strength knows it is in the journey where she will become strong. Yahaira, you're an inspiration to our daughters and so many other women. Congratulations.
tough shoes to fill up, those speakers. And thank you, Dana, and thank you all for having me here today to share my story. Before coming into contact with NPower, I was a resident in a domestic violence shelter. I dropped out of college when I was a junior. I was the first person in my in my family to go to college, which was huge, but I was 8 weeks pregnant and in a failing marriage. Dropping out was honestly the least of my worries. I got a job at a food kiosk in Battery Park selling lobster rolls. I remember it was October and it was starting to get cold. At noon, the consultants would come down in their suits and order $20 lobster rolls. I didn't know what they did. I just told myself, someday, that's going to be me. I saw myself in their shoes. Fast forward, 8 months later, my son Aiden and I moved into a shelter. I had a newborn baby and 90 days to get our lives together. I was breastfeeding and trying to get my bearings. But to keep our shelter spot and our benefits, I had to find a job or get into a back-to-work training program. As soon as I secured a spot for Aiden at a Montessori school, the shelter pushed me to get a job. H&M, Forever 21, whatever I could find. But I didn't want a minimum wage sales position. I have never been in a shelter, but a lot of my family members had. I knew if I didn't create the right foundation, Aiden and I would end up right back there. I didn't want to expose my son to the childhood I grew up with, living in a community flooded with poverty, drug abuse, sickness, and violence. I kept asking my caseworker about back-to-work programming in tech. I think she thought it was crazy, but eventually she found me a training position, scanning documents and fixing printers at a local nonprofit. A couple of weeks later, the shelter director handed me a coffee-stained flyer for an intensive training program called NPower. She said, "I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but give them a call." I sat for an interview with NPower the next day, and the next week, I was sitting in classes. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say that every executive NPower brought into our classroom for guest lectures became my mentor. I would ask for informational meetings, 10-minute calls, anything I can get. Now, in the beginning, I just had one question. Is this really possible for me? I needed to know, was I just shooting darts? Is this a fantasy? Can I have a career in tech with my background? Person after person after person said, yes, of course you can. And that was all I needed. I started reading Yahoo Finance and technology news. I was watching speeches from Obama and Oprah to understand how to communicate without the slang that I grew up with. At the shelter, I would watch TLC's What Not to Wear to learn how to dress appropriately for interviews. I was becoming more confident, but around week 5, our 90 days at the shelter was up. The director saw how driven I was and found a Tier 2 shelter, which gave us an additional 24 months. But we had to relocate to the Bronx, which meant at any given day, we were spending hours on the train commuting between boroughs. I would wake up at 5 a.m. to get Aiden to school in Soho by 7, head to class in Brooklyn by 8, then over to my nonprofit job. Most nights we wouldn't get back home until 8 or 9 p.m. And I was in the middle of a terrible custody battle. Looking back, I'm surprised I was able to keep it together. NPower kind of checked every box for me. They brought in mentors so I didn't have to stalk people on LinkedIn. They set up site visits to help us learn to navigate the office environment. They taught me how to leverage my past experiences and skills with potential employers. I was 22 years old. I should have been graduating college. I'm like, okay, I'm a homeless mom going through a terrible divorce. How can I present the energy of a passionate, recent grad so that they'll take a chance on me? I had to signal I could hit the ground running. I was ready to start my internship when Hurricane Sandy hit the city and destroyed my placement site. I was devastated. I had the education, but I needed the experience. But if there's one thing I've learned on this journey, is that everything happens for a reason. NPower asked me to speak at graduation, and when I finished my speech, a senior executive from Deloitte offered me an internship on the spot. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about Deloitte. I've never heard of the Big Four. But sitting at orientation in a room full of Ivy League graduates, that's when it hit me how powerful NPower really is. They helped me. They helped give me, a homeless mom, a seat at that table. Deloitte placed me at their Battery Park site. I couldn't believe it. Remember, just 16 months earlier, I was outside freezing, pregnant, selling lobster rolls, unsure of where my life would end up. On my first day at Deloitte, I went to that very same food kiosk and bought myself a lobster roll. I'm not sure if I even ate it. I think I sat there in my suit just crying into it. That was my 360 moment. You can truly manifest anything you are willing to put the work in for. After my internship, I had 3 amazing job offers. I gathered all of my mentors on a conference call to help me choose. Ultimately, I accepted a role at Worldwide Technology, a global systems integrator with $13.4 billion in annual revenue. Today, nearly 8 years later, I am an associate managing consultant in a specialized group called Digital Transformation Group. Our mandate is to help our global financial services customers accelerate their digital transformation while de-risking it. NPower has been there for me every step of the way. I was often the only Black woman in the room. NPower taught me how to navigate office politics and negotiate salary. They helped me to advocate for myself and speak with power in a way that's not confrontational, but opens the door for people to look at something they may not have been conscious of. NPower has never left my side, and I will never leave theirs. Aiden and I live in an apartment in Flatbush now. He is a charismatic and intelligent 4th grader who is interested in coding and soccer. But right now, his main focus is running a huge campaign for a cat for Christmas. To this day, my mentors remind me that I am here because I've earned it. And now I mentor others. I'm here to tell them, yes, this is possible for you too. Organizations like NPower and Robinhood are making sure that's the case. I never wanted to say life happened to me. No, I took it by the neck. I had the drive, but NPower, they gave me preparation and opportunity, and it has made all the difference. Thank you.
Good morning. Whew. My name is Kaya Henderson, and on behalf of the entire Robin Hood board, first let me thank Yahaira, Nkosi and Marcus for sharing their journeys with us here this morning, and for reminding us the power of people, community, and the city we all love. And huge gratitude to the organizations that were part of their stories and part of Robin Hood's partnership with children, Touchdown NYC, and NPower. Thank you. To me, the Robin Hood Heroes Breakfast is the embodiment of what is possible in New York City. In a lot of other places, you can hit the skids, but you can't manage to make it back to become a leader in the corporate world or a beacon in your community. But in New York, we know that anything is possible. There are so many resources and so many amazing organizations that it's just a matter of connecting the right people with the right set of supports. And that is the epitome of Robin Hood's magic. Robin Hood exists at the heart of New York hustle and caring, deep caring, for our most vulnerable citizens. When I left my role as chancellor of the Washington, D.C. public school system, I promised myself that I would never just work on education again. Because what I learned is that if students were facing housing insecurity or hunger at home, it didn't matter if I got their test scores up or if I got them off to college. There was never one single solution or one single pathway out of poverty. I joined the Robin Hood board because this organization confronts all the challenges that people face in getting out of poverty for good by treating people at the intersections. And as New York goes, so goes the world. If we can build back better, we stand as a model to every other city, every other school district, and every other nonprofit. Robin Hood has the opportunity, does, and will continue to set the standard. So when we talk about getting kids back on track, getting families back on their feet, and getting New Yorkers back to work, please remember that it's not just one of those things, it's all of them. And to be successful, we need all of you. Many of you gave at our big benefit, and we are deeply grateful for that. But we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't ask those of you who can to do more, because there's plenty more for us to be doing to help our neighbors. So I want to thank our heroes once again for giving us the opportunity to learn from their powerful examples of strength and determination. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be present with us here this morning and for your continued support of Robin Hood. Thank you all for being Robin Hood. I hope you had a great Heroes Breakfast and happy holidays.
Will drive them away.